I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is HIPAA rules for website, social media, and patient reviews. I would now like to introduce our presenter for today, Paul R. Hales. Paul R. Hales, JD, is widely recognized for his ability to explain HIPAA rules clearly in plain language. He is an attorney licensed to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States, a graduate of Columbia University Law School and senior counselor of the Missouri Bar with an international practice in HIPAA privacy and security. Paul is the author of all content in the HIPAA e-tool. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, and welcome to everyone to this compliance panel educational webinar about the HIPAA rules that apply to websites, social media, and patient reviews. This webinar is educational. It's education about the law. HIPAA is a law, but it's not legal advice. Legal advice is something that you get from your attorney or your organization's attorney, someone with whom you have an attorney-client privileged relationship, is to talk about why the subject matter is important. That this webinar applies to both for-profit and nonprofit organizations. I received there are privacy rule changes coming. They were to have happened in this year, but it looks like they're not going to come into effect until the beginning of the next year. Here are links to information. This is government information about the proposed modifications. So why is this important? Violations of these HIPAA rules are highly visible, and they're highly visible because they're on the internet. Business associate, and you're required to comply with the HIPAA rules that apply to business associates. The HIPAA rules are really easy to follow step by step when you know the steps. Protected health information is the gold standard for the identity thief. Now that's really important because there are only two things that are needed for medical identity theft. And these criminals attack people of all ages, all walks of life. So what are the HIPAA rules for websites and social media? It's in the privacy rule. It's the definition of websites subject to HIPAA rules from a Facebook page that covers two hospitals that are in a very large regional hospital system. So a covered entity that maintains a website includes social media website like Facebook. There are two very simple website safeguards for providers, and those are in the HIPAA rule. So the comments took that, made a screenshot of it. The second safeguard is before you post any protected health information on a website or social media website, what is PHI as HIPAA defines it, and what is a valid HIPAA authorization? The definition of protected health information, according to HIPAA, protected health information really is, and it is, as I explained to you, any one of those identifiers that relates to the provision of health care. So here is an example of a Facebook post by a patient. Terms and conditions, those are a contract. You don't have to use Facebook. What is a valid HIPAA authorization? This is a checklist for a valid HIPAA authorization. So let's look at patient reviews. They're now called recommendations. Here's what the AMA, so let's take a look at some of published settlements of violations involving social media. Here's one. OCR investigated where a small dental practice never confirm a person is a patient of your organization unless you do have a valid HIPAA authorization. So we've looked at those things that I indicated we would, why it's important, what the HIPAA rules are for websites and social media, the HIPAA rules covering patient reviews. Why don't we go ahead and wrap up the webinar, and I want to thank everyone for your attention, and I want to wish you well in your HIPAA compliance program. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Paul. That does conclude the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now. Have a great day ahead.